Alright, hello everyone, this is Lawrence from the Atheist Community in Milwaukee, and I have a special guest today, Aron Ra.
How you do?
Thanks for being on. We are actually at Gateway to Reason right now, and it's awesome. There we have Matt Dillahunty, there's Tracie Harris, Russel Glasser, David Fitzgerald. There's a huge list of huge names. It's great. Are you enjoying this conference right now?
Oh yes, very much.
Yeah. Who has been your favorite speaker, aside from you, and why?
Well, generally I like to see PZ, and he's unfortunately going to take the stage after I'm on a plane tomorrow, so I'm going to miss him. Seth, I thought, did a brilliant presentation. I very often like his. I hadn't seen this one before. It was really good.
Yeah, and he did his on all the weird stuff that comes out of religion.
The weird rituals.
Yeah, like spinning dogs and...
I thought it was sickening, wasn't it?
Yeah, throwing babies.
How the fuck people get so stupid?
I don't know. I really don't know.
And he didn't even cover some of the really disgusting ones. Like, there's some subset of Muslims that do this terrible thing where they like torture a cow by throwing darts at it or making like the death of 1,000 cuts. So they all take tiny chops at this thing until it bleeds to death and dies of exhaustion.
That's ridiculous.
And then they, of course, they do the thing where they slice your baby's forehead with a knife.
Right. Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with people?
True. There's also this one thing. I know Muslims do it too. I think it was to honor the death of Muhammad's grandson or something, and they do this self-flagellation thing. Like they go out into the streets in masses, and they just take these whips with like barbs on the end of them and just start hitting themselves. Like it's like we're jumping back into the first century. It's ridiculous. Like I look at this stuff and I'm like, what is this? Is this like a normal thing, or is this just for like the extremists? And
I've often suggested that we should treat these bizarre beliefs, and really what faith-based belief isn't bizarre. But when you incorporate physical injury, not just to yourself, but cruelty to animals, cruelty to children, and genital mutilation, and all of the other insanity that they do, I would like to treat that like an insane issue, like a mental illness, but not medically. I don't mean to have it be treatable like that. I want society to view faith-based beliefs with a raised fucking eyebrow, instead of electing the guy who thinks that the Earth is 6,000 years old and that dinosaurs were created by magic, or that they were planted here by Satan only to confuse men's faith. If people believe shit like that, they don't get to have the office with the button attached to the nukes. This is just logic.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
How can you elect, and this is what we do, we elect people because they're firm in their convictions and strong in their beliefs, and this is what
who else is firm in their convictions? Donald Trump.
So we elect people who are firm in their convictions and strong in their beliefs to be sovereign leaders and judges. But if you're firm in your convictions and strong in your beliefs, and they're based on faith against reason, then you are electing people who are incapable of making a proper decision or judging your situation, because in effect they've already made up their mind. They have prejudged the situation. They're going to go with whatever their private bias sees. They're not going to examine the extenuating circumstances and reconsider other factors. No, it's black and white, not gray, and not what it really is, which is a spectrum of color.
The part that always bugs me is that even when you're talking to a person like Ken Ham, we'll go all out on this one. Even when you're talking to a person like Ken Ham, you notice that in like their everyday lives, when it comes to maybe their finances or work, something like that, they use logic and reason in every single point of their lives. But why is it when it comes to this one thing, they don't?
Because it's make-believe, and I mean that. It's not a sincere belief, and I'm convinced, and this is my own personal hypothesis, but I am convinced that the religious leaders and most of your devout believers, you're going to have people who believe because they've not been educated, because they were raised with this, and everybody else believes it, maybe they think there's some legitimacy to it, who have never examined their beliefs. But I'm not talking about those people. I'm talking about the people who are in the know and in charge. Now, these people are defending the faith. And the way that they defend the faith, whether in the higher tiers or in the lower ones, very often you can put them in a position where you can challenge to prove what's right or wrong. And when they realize you can prove a point, then suddenly there's huge cowardice, such as would never exist on my side of this argument. I mean, if somebody's going to bring me scientific facts to prove that I'm wrong, you know what that means?
Right.
That means, holy shit, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Do I want to stay wrong?
No.
What the fuck would I want to stay wrong, right? So it's bad to be proven wrong. It's embarrassing, but it's worse to be wrong, isn't it? So I'm not going to be afraid of finding out that I'm wrong, because truth matters more than whatever I would rather believe. But for these people, the belief matters more than whether it is true. And so you'll see that cowardice. You'll see them backpedal. You'll see the defenses come up when they realize you can prove that they're wrong.
Yeah. And the thing, that reminds me, do you think then one should take a person's feelings into account when talking to them about this? Like, I guess try to say things in a respectful way, sure. But if something you say, even though it's 100% true, will offend them, do you still think it should be said?
Okay, well, I'm going to give a caveat here. If I'm talking to a 96-year-old woman who has been a lifelong believer, I don't need to tell her shit about science. I mean, what would be the point of even beginning that conversation?
I guess there's no point, but
but I'm not worried about those people,
right?
Because she's not affecting policy, and she's not judging or governing over the lives of other people. Those are the people I'm concerned about. I'm not even concerned about Ken Ham and people like that. I'm concerned about Ted Cruz.
That sounds fair. Okay.
Yeah. So that asshole is going to get, if I ever had the opportunity to deliver information to these people, no bullshit, this is what it is, this is how you're wrong. But look how stupid we are as a country. We take the guy who thinks that the universe is 6,000 years old, the universe is 6,000 years old, and that the earth was once the only thing in it because it was the first thing created, and that 11 jillion galaxies were coughed out of nothing on the fourth day. He believes this kind of shit? Really? I don't think that, really. I think if we had a time machine, we could go back a million years. I know that he knows that we would go back and see my past, not his. I'm certain of that. But he's playing a political game. And what idiots we are, we put him in charge of fucking NASA. And this is what I meant about the society should react to people like that with a raised eyebrow. That we should treat them like, you're fucking crazy. Okay? We don't elect them. We don't put them in charge of our best shit.
I agree. So this I actually apparently did not hear about. You said that they elected this guy to be the head of NASA?
Yes. Ted Cruz is head of NASA.
I didn't know that, actually.
Ted Cruz previously tried to defund NASA.
Is that
why? Because NASA promotes climate change. And Ted Cruz is owned by big oil.
Right, yeah.
So they have a doctrine that they have to deny anthropocentric climate change. It's okay when people like Pat Robertson admit that climate change is real, as long as it isn't human caused. Because if we did it, that means we have to do something about it. And Christianity, especially prosperity gospel, is all about denying responsibility. You don't have to be accountable to anything or anyone. You can live like there's no tomorrow.
You just have to feel bad about it.
You don't even have to feel bad.
You have to pretend.
I'll pray for you.
Yeah.
And then they don't even fucking pray.
And okay, so the thing about prayer, it's like I saw a bumper sticker for this, or just a sticker or something, and it said, when you pray, it shows that you care
enough to do the very least.
Enough to do the very least. Thank you. That was just not coming to me.
Yeah, and it's funny. There was a minister that I worked with who I really like. I mean, he's a genuinely sweet guy, and we don't talk about religion because he knows where I am and he knows what I'll do to his belief. And I've told him up front, if we ever have that conversation, I will destroy your belief. So, we kept apart. He only asked me about religious questions like once, and I gave him a simple answer, and it crushed him.
Really?
So, yeah. So, I mean, he was one of those people that thought that there's no transitional species, there's no beneficial mutations. So he asked me this question with all of these loaded things in it, all of these wrong things, and says, so why do you believe what you do? So I respond back to show him the transitional species and the beneficial mutations and all of the other half dozen things that he threw in to show that he's completely wrong. And so I know what the response was to that. You've been lied to your whole life, is basically the answer that I had to give him. But where was I going with this? Yes. So this guy, at a moment when I was in a bit, when my granddaughter was in the hospital, and this guy comes up to me and he says, "I'll pray for you." And remember, he's a sweet guy. I know he's a genuine, kind-hearted soul. Not because he's religious. Ironically, he's religious because he's a kind-hearted soul, and he's been taught that this is where kind-hearted souls should be. Sadly, that's statistically not the case, but sometimes you do get really good people out there. So he tells me that he's going to pray for me. And when my granddaughter is dying of leukemia, and he tells me that kind of bullshit, I was not able to respond politely.
Yeah.
I said, well, thank you. Why don't you tell me to just write a letter to fucking Santa?
Damn.
Because that's what that means.
It's like
there's not. Okay, how do you even derive a positive feeling out of that? Right? You have to really believe that shit. And if you don't really believe that shit, then it can't be comforting. It's a stupid thing to say. If you have somebody dealing with real world problems, you think, well, here's a fortune cookie, it'll make it better. And what the hell?
Yeah, I don't understand that because
have a rabbit's foot. Maybe this.
Oh yes, no, those work. Don't talk shit about rabbit's foot. I mean, all they have to do is look at all the stories in the news of Christian scientists, and see that when their kids are ill, they tend to die. That's a bad thing. And
here, remember when we talked about how society needs to treat people who act like this?
That was what. Actually, the other thing I want to get on, they actually are doing that. They are. I saw an article. I haven't checked for its validity, but I saw an article and it wasn't The Onion, that said they will start treating people like that as if it were a mental disorder. This faith-based belief, like if you are going to do something because of your belief in some religion, that will harm you or your children, they have the right to say vaccinate your kids. They have a right to go over this because you are now going to be labeled mentally ill.
And there are statistics showing that whereas we do have kind, nice people. Everybody knows some kind, nice person who buys into the Christian thing because they're kind, nice people. But they don't examine the real thing that's going on with the belief. But statistically, what you have also is that these sincere believers respond to polls indicating that, and by FBI studies too, that there's a higher chance of child abuse in deeply religious or coming from deeply religious people.
Josh Tucker.
There's statistics. The more religious they are, the more extreme the abuse. And we're talking about child molestation as well. Evangelicals have a higher divorce rate and a higher rate of abortions. So we're talking about hypocrisy as well.
Really, a higher rate of abortions?
Higher rate of abortions, yes.
I did not know that.
And of divorces. So, I mean, there's a huge amount of hypocrisy, but it's also dangerous because they also promote the death penalty and they promote torture. Right? And this is the evangelicals who promote torture. Now, there's nothing about what Jesus taught about forgiving thy neighbor and turning the other cheek, because they don't buy that shit. Nothing about sell your clothes to buy food for the poor. No, there's none of that Jesus. They just forgot about it. This is the Jesus who flies a fighter jet dropping bombs on brown people. I don't know where that Jesus is in the Bible.
The convenient Jesus,
yes. So statistically, when you're in a devoutly religious, especially the more religious it is, the more potentially dangerous it is regarding child abuse and spousal abuse and other such things like that. Because religion is a great way of hiding deranged behavior. Now, if you couple that with behaviors that are just unsound, unsafe, unwarranted, and unreasonable, and what is more unreasonable than asserting facts that are not facts, asserting as fact things that are not evidently true, refusing to admit when you're wrong, believing impossible nonsense for no good reason, and then plugging your ears when anybody tries to convince you otherwise? That's the definition of unreasonable. And they tell us that we need to be open-minded?
It's crazy. It's we are open-minded. You and I, we're definitely open-minded. Because we're obviously skeptical, but I think James Randi put it nicely. Be open-minded, but don't be so open-minded that your brain falls out.
It's not that we need to be more open-minded. We are open-minded, but with a closed mind is what they call the armor of God or the helmet of God. You know, it just literally means, and one believer described it to me as stealing your mind, and steal as in the metal. So stealing your mind. To what? To prevent reason from getting in.
It's really such a detriment, and I don't know how. People are starting to realize these things. They're starting to become more progressive, and obviously not everybody, but for the most part, people are becoming more progressive, and they are completely rejecting what most of those books say. But they're still hooking on to this God belief. So, and I read an article somewhere, I did a whole thing on it, but it claimed that belief in God might be so deeply ingrained into human thinking that it cannot be expunged. And I was like, are you serious? That's like saying you can't be a vegetarian because we're naturally omnivores. So I did that thing on it, But what I have always wondered, and I can't type this into Google because you'll see what I mean. Why do we have a need to believe or a need to know? Like when I type this into Google, it autofills it in for me. You know what I mean? Why do we need to know X? No, I don't care about that.
Why do we need to know?
Why do we need to know? That is
the question for me seems to be whether you care about truth, because if you only care about the truth you want to believe, then you don't actually care about truth. If you would rather know an ugly truth than believe a beautiful lie, as I said, in order for you to understand anything, you have to make sure that your information and your interpretations are correct. If they're not, you don't understand it. And pretending to understand it doesn't mean you understand it. It doesn't matter how often you say that I know that I know that I know. Bullshit. Don't know any of it.
Yeah, and it's really strange because the people who are experts at things tend to they don't trust themselves as much. You know what I mean?
My favorite quote from Charles Darwin is ignorance more often begets confidence than does knowledge. That's 150 years before Dunning-Kruger.
All right, so I think we're running out of time. People are starting to come out, so it's about to get loud in here. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Good to meet you.
Thank you guys for watching.